The park was quiet that afternoon. A gentle breeze moved the leaves, and the sound of children's laughter floated in the distance. Most people came there to relax, to enjoy the shade of tall trees or the smell of fresh flowers. On one wooden bench, away from the noise, a man sat alone. His name was Adrian. He looked like someone with everything the world could offer, yet he carried a sadness in his eyes that nothing seemed to heal. His suit was simple but elegant, and anyone who knew him would recognize him as the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city. But here, in the park, he was just a lonely man lost in his thoughts. Adrian visited this park almost every day after work. He would sit in the same place, stare at the lake in front of him, and let his mind drift. People passed by, but he never paid attention. He had once been a man full of joy and dreams, but since his wife's passing years ago, silence had become his closest companion. The park gave him a quiet place where memories could come and go without disturbance. He liked it that way, or at least that was what he told himself. That day, something unusual happened. A little girl, thin and pale, walked toward the same bench. She held a small book in her hand and walked carefully, as if every step took effort. Beside her, a caretaker pushed a wheelchair slowly, ready to assist her if she got tired. The girl's eyes, though tired, sparkled with curiosity. She looked around the park, watching families laugh together, children run, and birds fly across the sky. Then her gaze stopped on Adrian, the man sitting alone. She tilted her head and whispered something to her caretaker. The caretaker hesitated, but nodded gently. The girl's small steps led her directly to him. Adrian did not notice her at first. His thoughts were far away, trapped in memories of the past. But a soft, gentle voice pulled him back. "Can I sit here?" the girl asked. Adrian turned, surprised. He saw a little figure standing beside him, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. Her voice was quiet but full of hope. He blinked, unsure of what to say. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him without business intentions. No requests, no deals, no company matters, just a simple question from a child. For a moment, he considered telling her to sit somewhere else. He valued his silence after all. But when he looked at her again, he noticed how fragile she seemed, like a small flower in a storm. Something inside him softened. "Yes," Adrian said, his voice low but clear. "You can sit here." The girl smiled, the kind of smile that could warm even the coldest heart. She sat down slowly, her caretaker close by, and placed her little book on her lap. Adrian glanced at her, unsure if he should say anything else. She opened the book, flipping through its pages, then looked at him again. "Do you come here every day?" she asked, her tone curious. Adrian was caught off guard. Nobody usually asked him about his habits. "Most days," he answered after a pause. "Why?" she asked. Adrian looked at the lake in front of them. The water reflected the light of the sun, shining softly. He thought about giving her a short reply, but something in her gaze told him she deserved honesty. "It's quiet here," he said. "I like the quiet." The girl nodded as if she understood more than most adults ever did. "I like quiet too," she whispered. "In the hospital, it's sometimes noisy. Machines beep all the time." Adrian's eyes turned toward her more carefully now. "Hospital?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said. "I stay there most days. But today my doctor said I could come to the park for a little while." She hugged her book closer, her smile still brave, though her eyes held a shadow of tiredness. Adrian felt a strange tug in his chest. He did not usually allow emotions to show, but hearing the word hospital from such a small child touched him deeply. He wanted to ask more but stopped himself, not wanting to seem rude. Instead, he asked, "What's the book about?" The girl's face brightened. It's a story about a girl who wanted to fly like a bird, she said. She believed if she wished hard enough, one day she would. She giggled softly, a sound that felt like music in the heavy air around Adrian. Do you like stories? Adrian thought about it. He had not read stories in years. He used to read with his wife before bed, simple books that made them laugh. Now the idea of stories felt far away, like something from another lifetime. Yet when he saw the hope in the girl's eyes, he found himself nodding. Yes, he said quietly. I used to. The girl's smile grew. Maybe I can read to you sometime, she offered. Adrian did not answer right away. He was not used to such kindness, especially from a stranger. But something about her innocent promise made him feel lighter, as if a locked door inside him had been pushed open just a little. Maybe, he replied, his lips curling into the faintest smile. They sat together for a while in silence, but it was not the heavy silence Adrian usually knew. It was softer, warmer, filled with the presence of a child who saw the world through. Bright eyes despite her weakness. When the caretaker finally said it was time to leave, the girl stood up slowly. She looked back at Adrian. Will you be here tomorrow? She asked. Adrian hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I will. The girl's smile returned, shining like sunlight through clouds. Then I'll see you tomorrow, she said. As she walked away, Adrian sat still, watching her until she disappeared from view. The park felt different now. The air was not only quiet, it was alive with the memory of her voice. For the first time in many years, Adrian felt that tomorrow might not be the same as yesterday. The next afternoon, the park looked the same as always. The trees swayed gently, and the lake reflected the golden sunlight. Adrian sat on the same wooden bench, as he always did, his hands resting on his lap. Yet something felt different. He was not only waiting for silence this time, he was waiting for her. The little girl who had spoken to him the day before, he told himself not to expect anything. Perhaps she would not come. Perhaps yesterday had been only a rare visit for her. But his heart, though careful, hoped. Then he saw her. Across the park, the small figure appeared again, walking slowly, while her caretaker pushed the wheelchair behind her. Her book was still in her hands. When her eyes met his, she smiled with such brightness that Adrian felt his chest loosen, as if a heavy chain had slipped away. You're here, she said happily as she reached the bench. As I promised, Adrian replied, his voice softer than usual. He moved slightly, making space for her to sit. She sat down carefully, her little hands clutching her book. I was afraid you would forget, she admitted. Adrian shook his head. I don't forget easily. The girl laughed gently, and it was a sound so pure that people passing by turned to look at her. She had a way of filling the air with joy, even while sitting pale and weak. For a moment, they simply sat side by side, watching ducks swim across the lake. Then the girl opened her book. Can I read to you now? She asked with excitement. Adrian hesitated. He was not used to such things anymore. But the eagerness in her eyes made it impossible to refuse. He nodded. Go ahead. She began reading. Her voice was soft, sometimes pausing for breath, but it carried magic. She read about a little girl in the story who wished to fly, who believed the sky was waiting for her. Every word seemed to lift the weight in Adrian's heart little by little. He listened, his eyes fixed not on the book but on the reader herself. She spoke with hope, with a spirit that seemed far larger than her fragile body. When she finished the chapter, she looked at Adrian shyly. Did you like it? Adrian took a moment before answering. Yes, he said finally. I liked it. Very much. Her face lit up. I can bring more stories tomorrow? Adrian found himself smiling again, a rare thing for him. I would like that. he said. The caretaker, standing nearby, watched silently. She had never seen the girl so alive outside the hospital. And she noticed something else, too. The man on the bench, whose face usually carried shadows, looked different now. His eyes seemed warmer, less distant. The girl leaned back, resting a little. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "most people don't talk to me much when they see me. They smile, but they don't really ask me things. But you listen. I like that." Adrian was quiet, unsure how to reply. He was not used to being seen as someone kind. Most people only saw him as a powerful man, the CEO, the businessman. Yet this small child looked at him and saw something else. Not money, not position, just a man sitting on a bench. He cleared his throat. "You remind me of someone," he admitted. "Who?" she asked with curiosity. "My wife," Adrian said softly. "She used to smile the way you do, as if the world was always brighter than it seemed." The girl nodded as if she understood the weight of his words. "Where is she now?" Adrian looked at the lake, his eyes growing distant. She is not here anymore." The girl stayed silent for a moment, then gently touched his arm. "I'm sorry." Adrian looked at her, surprised. Such simple words, yet they felt like a balm on his heart. He nodded. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while, but it was not heavy silence. It was gentle, filled with shared understanding. Suddenly the girl giggled. "Do you know what I want to do one day?" "What?" Adrian asked. "I want to eat the biggest ice cream in the world," she said, her eyes twinkling. "With all the flavors, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, mango, everything at once. Do you think that's possible?" Adrian chuckled quietly, the sound strange to his own ears. "I think with enough courage, anything is possible. Even the biggest ice cream." The girl clapped her hands with delight. "Then I will do it. When I get stronger, I will eat it, and maybe you can eat it with me?" Adrian hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I will." The caretaker looked down, trying to hide the tears in her eyes. She knew how difficult the girl's journey was, but in this moment, hope seemed real. The sun began to sink lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The caretaker reminded the girl it was time to return to the hospital. The girl sighed, softly, not wanting to leave yet, but she stood up and smiled at Adrian once more. "Thank you for listening," she said sweetly. "See you tomorrow." Adrian watched as she walked away, her small figure glowing in the evening light. His heart felt different. It had been years since he felt warmth like this. The park, once only a place of silence, now held something else. Something alive. As he rose from the bench, he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow." For the first time in a long while, he was looking forward to another day. The park became their secret meeting place. Day after day, Adrian found himself leaving work earlier than usual, something his employees had never seen him do before. For years, he had lived like a machine. Meetings, numbers, business deals, endless hours at his office. But now, every afternoon, he wanted to be on that wooden bench, waiting for a little girl with a smile that reminded him life could still be gentle. Her name, he learned, was Emily. She told him this one afternoon, while holding her book. "You should know my name," she had said with playful seriousness, "because we are friends now." Adrian had nodded, surprised at how natural the word friends sounded after so many years of loneliness. Emily spoke to him about many things, her favorite stories, the sky, the dreams she wished for when she closed her eyes at night. Adrian listened. He never interrupted, never judged. And slowly she began asking about him. "Do you have children?" she asked one day, tilting her head. Adrian's chest tightened. "No," he said quietly. Why not? He hesitated. Nobody asked him questions like this anymore. But Emily was not just anybody. She was pure, curious, and honest. Because life did not give me that chance, he said finally. Emily thought about it, then gave him a soft smile. Maybe you were waiting to meet me first, the words struck him deeply, though she had said them with childlike playfulness. He could not explain it, but in her presence, he felt less like a broken man and more like someone who could still be whole. One evening, after leaving the park, Adrian sat in his car longer than usual. The driver waited silently as Adrian's eyes wandered over the city lights. His thoughts drifted back to the years before Emily. He remembered his wife, Clara. She had been his anchor, his balance, the person who made him believe in simple joys beyond wealth and power. Their days were filled with laughter, small adventures, and plans for a family. But then, illness came quickly and stole her away before they had the chance to build the future they had dreamed of. After her passing, Adrian had buried himself in work. He became known as the brilliant, cold CEO who turned everything into profit. People respected him, feared him, envied him, but nobody truly knew him. He refused to let anyone in. The warmth of love felt like a memory locked behind iron doors, until Emily. Her presence had begun to stir memories of Clara, not in a painful way, but in a way that reminded him of the man he once was. He remembered Clara's words one night, when they had sat by the window watching stars. One day, when you feel lost, life will send you a light. Promise me you'll let it guide you. Was Emily that light? He could not answer. But her laughter, her courage, her belief in impossible dreams, these things touched him more than he wanted to admit. The next afternoon, Emily noticed his silence. She sat beside him, swinging her legs gently. "You're thinking about something sad," she said. Adrian looked at her, surprised. "How do you know?" She shrugged with a wise little smile. "Because your eyes look heavy. My nurse says eyes can tell stories even when mouths stay quiet." Adrian gave a faint chuckle. "Your nurse is right." Emily leaned closer. "Do you miss someone?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I miss my wife." Emily's expression softened. "Was she nice?" "She was the kindest person I ever knew," Adrian said, his voice carrying both pain and tenderness. "She made everything brighter. Even ordinary days felt special. With her." Emily sighed, hugging her book. "I think she would be happy that you are not sitting here alone anymore." The simplicity of her words pierced Adrian's heart. How could a child so young, fighting her own battles, understand grief better than adults who surrounded him every day? He felt a strange comfort in her presence, as if she carried a wisdom far beyond her years. As days passed, Adrian noticed Emily growing tired more quickly. Sometimes her hands trembled when she turned the pages of her book. Sometimes her voice wavered when she read. But she always smiled, always spoke of tomorrow as if it were a gift waiting just for her. One afternoon, when the sky was painted in soft orange light, she asked him, "Do you believe people can really fly if they wish hard enough?" Adrian thought about her question. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I believe people can rise above pain. Maybe that's another kind of flying." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "Then maybe I'm flying already." Her words left him quiet for a long time. That night, Adrian sat in his office long after everyone had left. Papers lay untouched on his desk. He stared at them, then slowly closed the folders. For the first time, work did not seem like the most important thing. Instead, he thought about Emily's laugh, her dreams, and her courage. He realized something he had never allowed himself to admit. His grief had frozen his heart for years. He had been alive, but not truly living. And now, through the presence of a sick little girl who loved stories, his heart was learning how to beat again. He leaned back in his chair, whispering to the empty room, "Clara, maybe this is the light you told me about." The next day at the park, Emily waved at him with both hands as if she had been waiting all morning. "Guess what?" she said excitedly. "What?" Adrian asked, amused by her energy. "There's going to be a special event at my hospital, a small party for the children. Music, stories, maybe even balloons. Will you come?" Adrian blinked. No one had invited him to something so simple in years. "Me?" he asked. "Yes, you," Emily said firmly. "You're my friend, and friends come to special days." Adrian felt a warmth spread in his chest. Slowly he nodded. "Then I will come." Emily grinned, clapping her hands. "I knew you would say yes." And just like that, the lonely CEO who had once hidden from the world found himself agreeing to step into a place he had never dared to go before, a place filled with sick children, laughter, and fragile dreams. For reasons he could not fully explain, he looked forward to it. The hospital looked nothing like the world Adrian was used to. He was a man who attended high-class meetings in tall glass towers, who walked through halls filled with polished marble and expensive paintings. But here the walls were painted with bright drawings of animals and balloons. The floors carried the soft steps of nurses, and the air was filled with both laughter and quiet sighs of children fighting their illnesses. Adrian walked slowly down the corridor, guided by Emily's caretaker. He had promised Emily that he would come to the event, and though part of him had wanted to refuse, afraid of what he might feel, he could not disappoint her. When he entered the small hall, he froze. The room was decorated with colorful paper chains, balloons, and hand-painted posters that read Hope and Smiles Day. Children sat in small chairs, some with masks, some in wheelchairs, others sitting cross-legged on the floor. Nurses and doctors moved around, smiling and clapping. It was simple, nothing like the grand events Adrian usually attended. Yet it felt more alive than anything he had seen in years. And then he saw her, Emily, sitting in the front row, her book on her lap. When her eyes met his, her whole face lit up like sunshine. She waved both hands excitedly. "You came!" she shouted across the room, her voice full of joy. Adrian felt every eye turned toward him. He was not used to such attention in places like this. But when he saw Emily's happiness, his hesitation faded. He walked to her side and gave a small nod. "As I promised," he said softly. Emily giggled and patted the empty chair beside her. "Sit here. You're my guest." Adrian sat down, feeling oddly nervous as if he did not belong in this room. But Emily leaned close and whispered, "Don't worry. Everyone is kind here." And just like that, he began to relax. The event started with music. A volunteer played a guitar while children clapped along. Some sang loudly, others just smiled shyly. Adrian watched, his chest tightening. These children, though weak in body, carried such strong spirits. They laughed without fear, sang without hesitation, and smiled as if each moment was a treasure. Then came the stories. One by one, children stood up to share short tales they had written or read from books. Some were about magical lands, some about brave heroes, some about simple wishes like eating their favorite food or going to the beach. When Emily's turn came, she stood carefully with her caretaker's help. She opened her book and began to read. Her voice was soft but clear, filling the room with warmth. She read about the little girl who wished to fly, the same story she had shared with Adrian before. But this time, Adrian saw it differently. The way Emily read, her eyes shining with hope, made it feel like she was telling her own story. She too wanted to rise above her pain, to live freely, to touch the sky even if only in dreams. When she finished, everyone clapped. Adrian felt his throat tighten. And to his own surprise, he clapped too, louder than he ever had at any business event. Emily turned to him with pride. "Did you like it?" she asked. "Yes," Adrian said honestly. "You were wonderful." Her smile widened. "I was brave, wasn't I?" "Very brave," Adrian agreed. After the performances, there was a small table with snacks, cookies, juice, and fruit. Children gathered around, talking and laughing. Adrian stood nearby, observing quietly. He felt like an outsider, yet he also felt something he had not experienced in years: belonging. One little boy tugged at his sleeve. "Mister, are you Emily's father?" he asked, curiously. Adrian froze. "No," he said after a pause. "I'm her friend." The boy nodded seriously, then ran off. Adrian turned and saw Emily watching him with amused eyes. "He thought you were my father," she whispered with a giggle. Adrian gave a small smile. "It seems so." Emily tilted her head. "But you do look after me like one." The words struck Adrian deeply. He had never been called a father, never had the chance to be one. Yet here was this little girl, giving him a role he never knew he longed for. He didn't know how to answer, so he simply placed a gentle hand over hers. She smiled as if that was enough. Later, as the event came to an end, balloons floated down and children received small gifts. Emily got a soft toy bear, which she hugged tightly. She turned to Adrian and whispered, "Thank you for coming. I was so happy you were here." Adrian looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt his heart lighten. "I should be the one thanking you," he said. "You showed me something I had forgotten." "What?" Emily asked curiously. "That there is still joy in this world," he replied. Emily leaned against him, resting her tired head on his arm. "Then you should come again. There will always be joy if you look for it." Adrian stayed quiet, but in his heart, he knew she was right. That night, when he returned home, he sat by the window of his large, empty house. The city sparkled outside, but it no longer felt cold. He remembered Emily's smile, the laughter of the children, the sound of their small voices reading brave stories. He thought about how he had spent years building wealth, walls, and distance, yet in a single afternoon, a group of sick children, and one little girl in particular, had shown him more courage than he had ever known. He whispered softly, as if speaking to Clara, "I went today. I saw their light. And maybe I can still be part of something good." For the first time, he felt a spark inside him, a spark that told him tomorrow would not just be another day of business. It would be another step toward healing. The park bench stood empty. For the first time in weeks, Adrian sat there alone again. The afternoon sun shone gently across the lake, but its warmth did not reach him. His eyes kept searching the pathway, waiting for the small figure who always came walking slowly with a book in hand. But Emily did not come. At first, Adrian told himself she must be late. Maybe the caretaker had been delayed. Maybe the hospital had kept her a little longer. He waited patiently, though a strange heaviness grew in his chest. Hours passed. The shadows grew longer, and still she did not appear. That night, Adrian returned home unsettled. His large house, usually a place of quiet escape, felt emptier than ever. He looked at the chair where Emily had once sat during the hospital event, at the little drawing she had given him of a bird flying high in the sky. For the first time in years, he felt restless. Sleep did not come easily. The next day, he returned to the park earlier than usual. Again, he sat. Again, he waited. And again, Emily did not come. By the third day, worry consumed him. He could not sit still anymore. Finally, he approached her caretaker, who often walked with her. When he found her outside the hospital entrance, His heart sank at the look in her eyes. "She is not well," the caretaker explained gently. "She has been admitted. The doctors are watching her closely." Adrian felt a sharp pain inside, something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. "May I see her?" he asked quickly, his voice urgent. The caretaker nodded, though surprised. "Of course, she will be happy to see you." When Adrian entered Emily's hospital room, the sight broke him in a way he had not expected. She lay on the bed, her small frame almost hidden under white blankets. Her face looked pale, and the sparkle in her eyes seemed weaker. Machines stood beside her, humming softly, measuring her breaths and her heartbeat. Yet when she saw him, her lips curved into a smile. "You came," she whispered. Adrian moved to her side, sitting carefully on the chair beside the bed. His hand trembled as he reached for hers. "Of course I came," he said gently. "I was waiting for you at the park. When you didn't come—" "I worried," Emily squeezed his hand weakly. "I wanted to come, but I was too tired. The doctor said I must rest." Adrian nodded, forcing himself to smile for her sake. "Then we will sit here instead. The park can wait." Emily's eyes softened with relief. "Will you stay?" "As long as you need," Adrian said firmly. The hours passed slowly. Adrian sat by her side, reading the storybook she loved. His voice, usually cold in business meetings, carried a new gentleness as he spoke each word aloud. Emily listened quietly, her eyes fluttering closed at times, but she always smiled when he continued. At one point, she whispered, "You read just like my mother used to." Adrian's throat tightened. "And you listen just like my wife used to," he replied softly. The room fell silent after that, filled only by the steady rhythm of the machines. Yet in that silence, a bond stronger than words grew between them. Over. The next few days, Adrian returned again and again. He rearranged his entire schedule, something his company had never seen him do. Meetings were postponed, phone calls ignored. His world now centered around a hospital room where a little girl fought with all the courage she had. He brought small surprises to brighten her days: colorful balloons, puzzle books, little toys shaped like animals. Each time, Emily's smile grew, even if her body grew weaker. One evening, he brought her a snow globe with tiny stars inside. When she shook it, the stars glittered as if the whole sky had been captured in her hands. "It's like flying," Emily whispered, gazing at it with wonder. "Yes," Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like flying." But despite the smiles, Adrian could see the truth. Emily was growing weaker. Her laughter was softer, her voice slower, her hands colder. Each time he left the hospital, he carried a fear in his chest that one day she might not be there when he returned. One night, unable to bear the thought, Adrian sat alone in the hospital garden. His hands covered his face as memories of Clara rushed back. He remembered sitting helplessly by his wife's side, watching her slip away despite all his wealth, all his power. He had promised himself never to feel that pain again. Yet here he was, standing on the edge of it once more. But then he remembered Emily's words. "There will always be joy if you look for it." He wiped his eyes, stood up, and made a silent vow. He would not let fear steal these moments. If Emily's time was short, he would fill it with love, laughter, and comfort. He would give her all the warmth he had hidden away for years. The next day, when Emily woke, she found Adrian already there by her side, holding a storybook. "You're early," she said weakly, but with a small smile. "I didn't want to miss a single moment," Adrian replied. Emily reached for his hand. "You're my best friend," she whispered. Adrian swallowed hard. "And you are mine," he said truthfully. That night, after leaving the hospital, Adrian sat in his car and made a decision. He would do more than just sit by her side. He would use his resources, his power, his wealth, everything, to make sure Emily received the best care possible. Quietly, without telling her, he arranged for special treatments, medicines, and expert doctors. He knew he could not control fate. But he also knew he could fight for her, even if just to give her more days to smile. For the first time since Clara's passing, Adrian did not feel powerless. He felt like a man with purpose again, and that purpose was a little girl who had once asked, "Can I sit here?" The hospital room had slowly become a second home for Adrian. The white walls, the faint smell of medicine, the quiet footsteps of nurses, it all blended into the rhythm of his days. But what mattered most was the little girl in the bed, whose fragile smile gave the room more warmth than any sunlight. Emily had grown weaker, but her spirit had not broken. Every time Adrian walked in, her eyes brightened. She would wave her tiny hand and whisper, "You came," as if she still could not believe he would always return. And Adrian always did. One morning, he entered carrying a small bag. Emily looked curious. "What's inside?" she asked softly. Adrian sat by her bed and pulled out a small sketchbook, along with colored pencils. "You told me you liked drawing," he said gently, "so I thought maybe we could draw together." Her face lit up in delight. "Really?" He nodded, handing her a pencil. "You draw something and I will too. Then we'll show each other." Emily leaned against her pillows and began carefully sketching. Her hands trembled a little, but her focus was strong. Adrian, though rusty, began drawing as well. He sketched a simple house with a tree beside it. When they finished, Emily turned her sketchbook to him. She had drawn two figures sitting on a park bench, side by side, one tall, one small. Above them, she had drawn a wide sky filled with birds. Adrian's chest tightened. "It's us," he whispered. Emily grinned. "Yes, you and me, friends who sit together." Adrian smiled back, though his eyes grew moist. He realized then that she did not just see him as a visitor. She saw him as family. Days passed, and Adrian kept finding new ways to bring joy to her room. Sometimes he brought music. He remembered Clara's favorite piano songs and asked a small musicians group to come and play softly for Emily. Her face glowed as the gentle tunes filled the air. Other days he brought her stories. Not just books, but his own memories. He told her about his childhood, about how he had once climbed a tree and fallen, about how he had worked hard to build his company, about how lonely he had become after Clara's passing. Emily listened with wide eyes. "So that's why you always sat alone?" she asked one evening. Adrian nodded slowly. "Yes. I thought if I stayed alone I wouldn't feel pain again, but then you came." Emily squeezed his hand. "And I made you sit with me." "Yes," Adrian said with a gentle laugh. "You did." But it was not only Adrian who gave. Emily, despite her illness, gave him something far greater: hope. Her small acts of courage touched him more deeply than anything else. One afternoon, when her breathing became difficult, Adrian leaned forward in panic. But Emily, even in that moment, whispered, "It's okay. I'm not afraid. I'm happy you are here." Those words carved themselves into Adrian's soul. He realized that even as her body weakened, her heart carried a strength far beyond her years. Adrian also began to help in practical ways. He spoke with doctors, arranged treatments, and made sure Emily had every comfort possible. But he never told her about the large amounts of money he spent or the effort he made behind the scenes. For her, he wanted their moments to remain simple, filled with stories, laughter, and warmth. One evening, he brought her a surprise. A nurse wheeled in a small screen. On it played a video of the park where they had first met. Adrian had arranged for someone to film the spot at sunset. The golden light reflected on the lake, and the bench stood waiting. Emily's eyes widened. "It's our bench." Adrian smiled. "Yes, I thought if you can't go to the park, then the park can come to you." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's beautiful. Thank you." Slowly, Adrian noticed something changing within himself. The cold walls around his heart, built after Clara's death, were crumbling. Where once there had only been silence, now there was laughter. Where once there had only been grief, now there was hope. One night, sitting by Emily's bed as she slept, Adrian whispered to himself, "You saved me, little one." But life was not simple. Emily's illness had good days and bad days. Some mornings she had enough strength to sit up and draw. Other mornings, she barely had the energy to open her eyes. On the hardest days, Adrian stayed longer, reading aloud to her even when she could not respond. He wanted her to feel his presence, to know she was not alone, and on the brighter days, he brought small adventures. Once he asked the hospital staff for permission to take her to the rooftop garden. Wrapped in a blanket, Emily sat in a wheelchair as Adrian pushed her gently. When they reached the rooftop, the evening sky stretched wide, painted with pink and gold. Emily gasped in wonder. "It looks like the sky in my drawings." Adrian knelt beside her. "Yes, and one day you will paint this too." She looked at him with tired but shining eyes. "If I can't, will you paint it for me?" Adrian felt a lump in his throat. "I promise I will." That night, after taking her back to her room, Adrian sat in his car before driving away. He thought about all the days they had shared. He realized something powerful. This little girl had given him more healing than all the years of loneliness ever had. He no longer felt like a man trapped in grief. He felt like a guardian, a friend, a father figure. Someone with a reason to wake up and fight. And though fear still lingered in his heart, it was no longer stronger than hope. For Emily had taught him that even in sickness, even in weakness, love could grow, and that love had changed him forever. The morning sun shone through the hospital window, filling the room with a golden light. Emily lay quietly in her bed, her small frame surrounded by pillows. Adrian sat beside her, as he always did. His suit jacket was folded over the chair, his tie loosened. For weeks, the hospital had become his second office, though he no longer cared about schedules or meetings. All that mattered was the little girl who had changed his world. Emily stirred awake and turned her tired eyes to him. "You're here again," she whispered with a smile. Adrian leaned closer. "Of course. Where else would I be?" She giggled faintly. "Maybe in your tall building with shiny windows?" Adrian shook his head. "No building could ever be more important than you." For a moment, silence filled the room, but it was a peaceful silence. Emily closed her eyes, holding his hand. And Adrian felt something stir inside his chest, something soft, warm, alive. Over the next days, Emily's condition wavered. There were hours when she was cheerful and wanted to draw or listen to music, and there were hours when her strength failed her. Through it all, Adrian stayed. Nurses and doctors began whispering about the wealthy man who spent his days in a simple hospital room, not as a CEO, but as a guardian. The staff noticed how Emily's eyes always searched for him and how his presence seemed to give her courage. They also noticed how Adrian himself had changed. The man who once avoided people now greeted them with quiet warmth. It was as though the little girl's light had softened the hardest parts of his heart. One afternoon, Adrian brought in a surprise, a small box tied with a ribbon. Emily looked curious. "What's this?" He placed it in her lap. "Open it and see." With careful fingers, she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple yet elegant, with a tiny charm in the shape of a star. Her eyes widened. "It's beautiful." Adrian smiled. It's a promise, a star, so you'll always remember to look up even on the darkest nights. Emily traced the charm with her finger. And will you wear one too? Adrian reached into his pocket and showed her an identical bracelet around his wrist. Always. She beamed, and for a moment the hospital room felt brighter than the sun. But as much as Adrian tried to shield her, he knew the truth. Emily's illness was serious. The doctors were kind but cautious, speaking carefully around her. Adrian listened to every detail, searching for hope in their words. One evening, after a long talk with the doctors, he sat by her bed, struggling to smile. Emily studied his face and whispered, "You're worried." Adrian hesitated. Then he nodded. "Yes, because I want you to be well." She held his hand tightly. "I'm not afraid. You told me once that even when people leave, love stays, right?" His throat tightened. "Yes. Love always stays." "Then don't be sad," she said gently, "because you'll always have me here." She touched his chest, right above his heart. Adrian closed his eyes, fighting back tears. "And you'll always have me." The weeks went on. Emily's strength came and went like waves. On good days, Adrian read her stories of brave adventurers. On weekdays, he simply sat with her in silence, letting her small hand rest in his. But, no matter the day, they shared one truth: they were no longer alone. One bright morning, Adrian received a call. The doctors had agreed on a new treatment that might give Emily a better chance. It was risky, but it carried hope. Without hesitation, Adrian arranged everything, sparing no effort. When he told Emily, her eyes widened with both surprise and excitement. "Does this mean I can get better?" Adrian brushed her hair gently. "It means we will try with all our strength. And no matter what, I'll be with you." Her smile returned, brighter than ever. "Then let's try." The day of the procedure arrived. Adrian waited outside the room, pacing back and forth. He had faced boardrooms, investors, and crises, but nothing had ever made his heart pound like this. Hours passed slowly until finally the doctor emerged. Adrian rushed forward. "How is she?" The doctor gave a small, tired smile. "She is resting. The procedure went well. Now we wait, but the signs are hopeful." Relief flooded through Adrian. He pressed a hand over his face, whispering a silent thank you. Days later, Emily woke stronger than before. She could sit up longer, her laughter returned more often, and the sparkle in her eyes shone brighter. Adrian noticed every detail, cherishing each moment as though it were the greatest gift. One afternoon, as they sat by the window watching the sky, Emily said, "Do you know what I want when I'm better?" Adrian smiled. "Tell me." "I want to go back to the park, to sit on the bench again, just like the first time." Adrian's voice grew thick with emotion. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." Weeks turned into months, and Emily slowly grew stronger. The hospital visits became less frequent, replaced by walks in the garden, drives through the city, and at last, the long-awaited return to the park. When they arrived, Emily ran ahead to the familiar bench. She sat down, patting the space beside her. "Can I sit here?" she teased, her voice filled with laughter. Adrian chuckled, his heart full. "I think the seat is already yours." He sat beside her, just as he had that very first day. Together, they watched the birds take flight. Their wings spread wide against the sky as the sun dipped low, painting the world in gold. Adrian turned to her. "Emily, you gave me back my life. You taught me how to hope again." She leaned against his arm. "And you gave me family. Even if it's just us two, that's enough." Adrian wrapped his arm gently around her shoulders. No, little one. It's more than enough. It's everything. And as the evening settled, a new chapter began. Not of loneliness or fear, but of love, healing, and a bond that would last forever.